Welcome back to my channel. This is Mama 3. Thank you for being here with me. Please hit the like button, comment, share, subscribe. Sorry for being late. Wasn't sure if I was gonna reschedule or not, but I decided to come on since I rescheduled it, since I said that I was gonna be more consistent. So I don't know how many of you have heard about this story. The 15-year-old accused of killing his ex-girlfriend's mother and two younger siblings in Odessa, Texas. Hey sis Mel, I miss you. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for being here. Please double tap the screen. Excuse me. Please double tap the screen as you come in. All right, before we get into anything, I just want to say this clearly. This is a sad situation. It might be emotional, and this is not something I, rushed bringing to the channel. When it comes to children, sometimes you got to move, the right way. Yeah, I understand. So this is my first time covering this case, and I just wanted to do it the right way, carefully, respectfully, and honestly. So tonight we're talking about the case out of Texas, Odessa, Texas to be specific. It's involving a 15-year-old teen who unfortunately is being accused of unaliving his ex-girlfriend's mom and two younger siblings. 3 lives were lost. 2 of them were children. Yeah, it's all right. Taking it one day at a time. The only way to do it. um, yeah, not really where I want, not really where things need to be, but what can I do right now? Not a thing. But I'll be all right, hopefully. So 3 lives were lost, 2 of them children. And anytime children are involved, whether as victims or as the accused, we need to, slow down a little. We don't need to rush through anything. We don't get to turn it into background noise. So this is not drama. This is not gossip. This is about understanding what happened, what we know, what we don't know, and what this says about mental health, emotional regulation, and how we are or are not helping kids cope with pain. A lot of the stories that I cover, it all boils down to mental health. You know, there are so many issues with mental health across this country. So many people do not know how to deal with their emotions. And this is something that I'm always talking about, that we need to, you know, teach our children, teach ourselves to have emotional intelligence and to get on top of any mental health issues that we may see, you know? Because unfortunately, in this case, being rejected led to a tragedy. Yes, so come on in, hit that like button for me. Engage, share. So I also wanted to do something, important right now. I want to say the names of the, you know, people who lost their lives. But Unfortunately, I can't say the children's names because, they are minors. They were minors. But because they are more than a headline, they are more than a case number. According to police and multiple news reports, the victims in this case have been identified as Jessica Rodriguez, a 39-year-old mother, her 13-year-old daughter, and her 9-year-old son. A mother and two children. Two kids who never got the chance to grow up, graduate, dream, or understand why this happened. These lives matter. These lives mattered. Their names matter. So let's walk through the confirmed facts slowly because details matter. The suspect is 15 years old. That alone should stop us. 15 is still a child. He is accused of killing three people, three lives, three families have changed forever. The victims were his ex girlfriend's mother, Jessica Rodriguez, and her two younger children. This happened inside their home in Odessa, Texas, a place that's supposed to feel safe, you know, inside their own home. Who knows what they were doing that day, getting things ready for the next day, getting dinner made, watching TV, you know. They probably thought it was just a regular day. They never thought that, somebody was going to come in their house to unalive them, you know, and especially it being a 15-year-old teen. Hey, sis Lily. Welcome in, welcome in. Okay, it's all good. Enjoy your movie. Police say the teen fled the scene on foot, meaning there was time to think, time to run, time for reality to start setting in. He was arrested within about 40 minutes. He has been charged with capital murder involving multiple victims. A 15-year-old charged with capital murder involving multiple victims. Because he is a minor, he is being held in a juvenile detention facility, and his name has not been released. The ex-girlfriend survived, but she lost her entire family. Just sit with that. She lost her mom, the one that has been protecting her all her life, and she lost her siblings. How sad is that? How freaking sad. Only 13 and 9 years old were the siblings. They had their whole life ahead of them. Why did a 15-year-old? This is why you have to be careful because first of all, the boy is 15 and they were in a relationship. Why were they even in a relationship? This is, you know, this is the things that can happen when you just try to be grown too quickly. And what happens when somebody doesn't know how to deal with rejection. So I want to make sure everyone understands the timeline because this helps people grasp how quickly this escalated. According to the police, the teen allegedly went to the family's apartment following a breakup with his girlfriend. And and he was actually going to go to the school and unalive the ex-girlfriend. But for some reason it clicked in his head to go into her family's house instead. I guess he wanted to inflict whatever kind of pain he could on her, you know? So, yeah, it is very sad. So, at some point inside the home, shots were fired. When officers arrived, Jessica Rodriguez and her two children were found deceased inside the apartment. The teen fled, and approximately 40 minutes later, he was located and taken into custody. This is not something that unfolded over days or weeks. This was rapid. They found him right away. Right away. And, this escalated quickly also. The violent escalation, he went, as soon as she broke up with him, he went, I don't know, I'm still trying to figure out where did he, get the weapon. But this is just a sad situation. And this shows you that we need to, I know that we try to be cool with our children and things like that. We want to let them have their little boyfriend or little girlfriend, because we don't want them doing it behind our back. But at what age are you able to handle those emotions really? You know? You know, uh, Remember puppy love? You feel like you're so in love with that person that you'll do anything, just anything to be with that person. You'll go against your family at that age. You know? At that age, you'll freaking stop being friends with your best friend just to be with the person that you want to be with, you know? So obviously, this person did not know how to deal with the rejection. He must have felt like the world was coming down on him. Everything was, his heart must have felt like it was broken. But that still doesn't justify his actions, doesn't justify killing three people, you know? So there are no publicly confirmed mental health diagnoses, no publicly released violent criminal history. Hold on 1 minute. Yeah, so there was no confirmed restraining orders, no publicly released school records showing violent behavior. That does not mean nothing was wrong, you know? It means nothing has been officially confirmed or released. And I'm sure as time goes by, we'll find out more and more. But what I do know is that something was wrong, even though it's not on paper. Something was wrong, and something is wrong. And I'm, not going to speculate just to fill the silence, but credibility matters. So I'm waiting to see what comes out that, is on paper. Because I'm sure now that he's in a juvenile detention center, I'm sure that they are, running all kind of tests on him to see his mental capability, to see where his head was at. People always ask, what happens now? So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the legal side. The teen has been charged with capital murder involving multiple victims because he is 15. He is currently in juvenile custody, not in adult jail. Prosecutors will eventually decide whether this case stays in juvenile court or they seek to have him tried as an adult. That's is really hard because he's 15 years old. He hasn't had any violence prior to this, but does that excuse it? You know, I don't think that excuses it. And if that was your family, would you want him tried as a juvenile or would you want him tried as an adult? Let me know. What would you prefer if this was your family? Please double tap the screen as you come in. Double tap the screen. Unfortunately, this is a case about a 15-year-old that unalived his ex-girlfriend's family, her mother, Jessica, and her two siblings that were a 13-year-old female and a 9-year-old male in Texas last week. So that decision affects sentencing, long term consequences, and how this case moves forward. And just to be clear, legally, he is presumed innocent until proven guilty. And everything I say is allegedly and based on my research and opinion. So now let's talk about the mental health aspect carefully and honestly. You know, mental illness does not equal violence. Most people struggling with mental health never hurt anyone, but emotional dysregulation, untreated rage, obsession, entitlement. How many of our children have we seen, that how we know that they have some sense of entitlement, and lack of coping tools, you know? And those all can become dangerous, especially in teens. Teen brains are still developing. Impulse control is still developing. Perspective is limited. Emotions feel overwhelming. They're just all over the place. Teens, they do lack that emotional intelligence and their emotions be all over the place. You know, they might be angry for no reason, want to keep to themselves. You know, you try to talk to them about how they're feeling, they don't want to talk to you. If you try to punish them for something they did wrong, they don't understand. They think that is something, that is not worth being punished. Then they're mad at you, slamming doors, having attitudes, you know, really just all over the place. They be up and down. Me having already dealt with two teens, I know it's not easy, and me having been a teen before, I know those emotions be all over the place. And at times there are times that you don't know how to deal with your emotions, you know? But that still doesn't excuse, anything like this to happen. That sense of entitlement, they think they're entitled to everything they want, and that's not true. And us as parents, we're not obligated either. But that's another thing. They think we're obligated to give them everything they want, you know? But when it comes to relationships, these emotions feel even more, intense, especially when they think they're in love, you know, and when teens don't have tools or the guidance or the emotional safety, they don't magically just figure it out. They improvise. Where did this story happen? It happened in Odessa, Texas, about 10 days ago. So, and then sometimes that improvisation turns into tragedy like this. Three people unalived, you know, because of a teen not knowing how to deal with their emotions. Instead of going to, another friend and talking about, my girlfriend broke up with me, or, talking to their mom or dad, about their emotions. He took things into his own hands, you know? He took it into his own hands and made a bad decision, a tragic decision, you know? This is one of the most important parts of this conversation. Kids need to be allowed to stay kids emotionally. We expect children to handle adult level pain with no adult level tools. They're dealing with breakups, rejection, embarrassment, social media pressure, pressure of having good grades, pre- um, pressure of looking good all the time, being up to date when they're going to school, public humiliation, and so much more they might not want to tell the people closest to them. And instead of slowing them down, we push them forward. You know, grow up, man up, you'll get over it, you know? But emotions don't just disappear because we ignore them. You don't grow out of emotions. You have to learn how to manage them, and in this situation, I see a lot of that. A lot of, just not knowing how to deal with emotions. And unfortunately, he made a tragic decision, you know, in that heat of the moment, you know. And I'm sure he's sitting in that facility kicking himself in the ass, knowing that he made a poor choice. And now he might be in prison for the rest of his life, depending, how they charge him, And those three people, Jessica and her two children, deserve justice. 15-year-old, being 15 years old does not excuse him, you know? And if it was my family, I would want justice. I don't care how, it would be hard to forgive, you know? It would be very hard to forgive, you know? And for the ex-girlfriend that's still alive, she has to deal with the guilt because she was in a relationship with this boy and chose to end things with him. He unalived, her mom and brother and sister. So she's gonna need therapy also now. So, pain in kids doesn't always look like sadness. Sometimes it looks like anger, defiance, obsession, withdrawal, silence. So look out for those look out for those things in your child, in your student, you know, in your patient. And silence is also dangerous, because people assume silence means peace, and most of the time it doesn't. It often means suppression. It means that they're suppressing their emotions. They're trying to hide their emotions. And us as adults, we know suppressing your emotions can lead to destruction, you know? He is going to juvenile jail, and when he turned 18, they sending him straight to the penitentiary. That that probably will be the outcome, and that's sad. Who knows? He's only 15. They might just start with trying him as an adult, but we'll see. And that's sad because he's basically he's losing at least 30 years of his life, especially because it was three lives, you know, lives lost. Three lives that he took, you know? So suppressing your emotions does not work. Usually they do explode eventually, you know? They don't just disappear. They wait. They wait until you can no longer hold them inside, and then tragedy just happens. So, teen relationships are intense because identity is still forming. When rejection happens, it can feel like abandonment, humiliation, loss of control, loss of self. And when rejection mixes with entitlement or obsession, red flags start waving. Love is not ownership, pain is not permission. But when you're a teen, that love that you have for that other person, you feel like they're gonna be yours forever, you know? Sure, I remember being a teen, my first relationship, I felt like that was gonna be the end of everyone. Like, that's it. That was the love of my life. You know, I even freaking went against my mom. I went against everybody. Everybody was giving me advice, for me to wake up and realize that, this wasn't the one for me. But because the emotions were so high, you know, felt like, that was the love of my life. Especially him being older than me. Boy, was I in a trance, you know? I used to freaking leave people's house as soon as he would call me, you know? He had me in a spell. It really was a spell. When you're a teen, your emotions are so high. You don't care what anybody says. And you really expect them to be your, one and only. Like you're going to be with them forever, you know? And um, and the thought of losing that person, especially if you ever, got intimate, because intimacy that connects you in a different way. So if you become intimate with that person as a teen, even worse, because now you feel connected in a different way, and you really don't want to lose that person. So if you do break up with somebody, it feels like the end of the world. And those emotions are hard to deal with. Shit, you feel like, you know, you literally feel like it's the end of the world. Like you don't know how you're gonna freaking carry on. Yes, those first love. experiences is something else. Hell yes, they are. You know, it's crazy. I was with Mai for 3 years. Like, who was I? Like, and I can't say, and I can't always say the parents allow it because, my parent did not want me to be in that relationship. And you think I cared? You know, I was very defiant at that time, you know, and we did last 3 years, but I had no, I should not have been with that person, especially we started at 14 years old. I was 14 years old. He was 5 years older than me. Like, what? Yeah. So I definitely remember those emotions and, how crazy they felt. Yeah, we definitely didn't care back then. You know, I was willing to run away if need be, but no, I didn't have to because even though my mother didn't, approve of it, she didn't want me. She wanted me still to be around her so she could make sure that I was, okay and protect me. So she did allow him to, come to the house and things like that. But, that was a very toxic relationship. But my point is, when you're in a relationship as a team, you just don't care about anything. And those emotions are so high that you just don't know how to control them because you don't have the emotional intelligence to do so. You know, you feel really lost, especially when you get rejected. you know some people, they do know how to deal with that, and they know their worth, and they say, oh well, you're lost, and they're on to the next one. But there's some people who knows what they had to do to make that person their boyfriend or girlfriend, and when they lose them, they don't know how to react because right away they think that they're not going to be able to move on, that they're not going to be able to get another person you know they get jealous because as teens, usually there's always somebody else that likes that person. So you can't stand the thought of them being with somebody else. And especially if you're in the same school, you have to see that person with another person, and no, you're not having it. So your emotions do go crazy. Mel says, I was with my first love for 6 years. Broke my heart. He was 14, I was 12, going on 13. We got back together in our 20s and had one child together. To this day, we are forever best friends. Aw, that was a nice turnaround. That was nice. Not my freaking first love. Shit. It was meant for me to get away from him. That's a whole nother story. That was a Even though it was 3 years, I dealt with a lot in that 3 years. I went through a lot, and too much. I went through too much that I shouldn't have went through. Psh, it's crazy. It ended with me having to lie to him to get away from him. Um, Yeah. To break up with him, I literally had to lie and act like I was going to my friend's house to be able to leave the house and just take all my shit and just disappear. But yeah, that's a whole nother story. But as young people, we shouldn't have to deal with that. And I'm so glad that, my children didn't go through that. And yeah, thank goodness. Especially now, my 18-year-old, seeing how, innocent he is and how not in the streets he is. I'm blessed, really. I am blessed. Cause As a parent, I wouldn't want to see my kids get hurt and stuff like that, you know? But Mel said, but when he broke my heart as a young teen, I was highly upset. Yeah, that's how you feel, you know? Lily says she knows the feeling. Hey, Trisha. Happy Friday. Welcome in. Welcome in. I'm talking about this case that happened. Unfortunately, it is sad, but I talk about it because most of my stories have to do with mental health. And unfortunately, this 15-year-old child, unalived his ex-girlfriend's mom and two siblings in Texas about 10 days ago. So I just wanted to talk about it because it's important, if you have children, that you talk to them about their emotions and you try to, notice any emotional issues that they might have so you're able to help them before tragedy strikes. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. But hope everybody's having a good Friday. So one of the biggest unanswered questions is how did a 15-year-old get access to a firearm? That matters. Access during emotional chaos changes everything. You know? This isn't political, it's preventative. Safe storage saves lives. So, police are still investigating how the firearm was obtained, whether it was secured, whether any adults could face accountability related to access. So, if it was his parents' weapon, they might be getting some charges because of what happened, you know? Do you think parents should be held accountable for their child being able to access their weapon? What do you guys think? I've seen cases that because of their child's actions, the parents actually go to jail as well. So, depending where this firearm was, if it was unlocked, and if it was locked, if he had access to it, know the pin, know the where the key was, whatever it was, I definitely think that, these adults should be held accountable in some way because your children shouldn't even know where the weapon is. To me, I don't think your kids should know that you even have a weapon in your house. Because anything could happen, whether it was them taking it out of the house or if their emotions struck when you were like punishing them or whatever, who knows what they could have done to you, you know? But as of now, no additional charges have been announced. But they are investigating how the hell did a 15-year-old get a hold of a damn firearm? You know? That is not okay. Easy access to a firearm is never okay. You know? There's young kids that have tragically lost their lives playing with a damn gun. There's, you know, incidents have occurred that kids have unalived their siblings or friends, having access to a firearm. And now this, the 15-year-old, because he had access to a firearm, took three people's lives. And that's not okay, you know? So the surviving child, with the ex-girlfriend, she's also 15 years old. So I don't want her reduced to the ex-girlfriend. She's a child who lost her mom, she lost her brother, she lost her sister, she lost her home, her sense of safety, you know? Cuz it happened inside their home. It happened where she was comfortable, where she laid her head every night, where she was supposed to be able to come home from school and, her mom hug her, ask her how her day was, you know? She was meant for her siblings to annoy her another day, you know? They were supposed to be getting ready for the holidays together, you know? Decorating the tree, wrapping presents, making cookies, decorating a gingerbread house, excited for next week, you know? And now she's left without her mom and her siblings. So she will definitely carry this trauma for the rest of her life. Hey, Supreme. Thanks for passing through. But yeah, so she will carry this trauma for the rest of her life. And her name has not been released. And that's for her protection. She's only 15 years old, you know? But what we do know is that these teens should not be in no relationship, you know? Fine, go to the movies every now and then, freaking go to a game or two, because I know in states like that, football is big and all that. So if, you have a little crush and you want to go to their little football game or whatever, fine. But to be in a relationship, I don't think it's okay because these teens don't know how to deal with their damn emotions, you know? And now freaking somebody's mom and siblings are not here, So we have to watch for those warning signs, Extreme reactions to breakups, possessiveness. And probably some of these reasons are the reasons why she didn't want to be with him anymore. Who knows if he was possessive towards her, you know, jealousy disguised as love. Who knows if she was trying to keep her away from her friends. He probably wanted her to only be around him, only talk to him, only text him, you know. He probably had the your mind language, like she was supposed to be his and no one else's you know, probably threats disguised as jokes, obsession, isolation, fascination with revenge. These are all signs that have to be, talked about and looked for. We have to watch our teens, Sometimes we think that, they might be mature, that they're able to deal with these emotions. But a lot of the times they cannot. They don't know how to deal with that. They don't know how to deal with rejection. They just don't know how to deal with emotions, period. You know? Like I said, as a parent, you punish them. They act like it's the end of the world, But they have to realize every consequence, everything that you do wrong, you know, is gonna get it deserves a consequence. Not gonna let you just walk all over us. But as a teen, when it comes to love, quote unquote, you know, they don't know how to deal with that. They don't really know how to deal with that. Hey, Corey. Happy Friday, everybody. Mel said, I hope you keep us posted on this story. I want the outcome. I want to know what the outcome will be and how did all of this happen? What caused it, etc. Yeah, what caused it is she broke up with him. He was actually going to unalive her, but something made him go to her family's house instead. He was actually gonna go to the school and unalive his ex-girlfriend. And instead, he chose to unalive her family. Sad. This is just sad all around, you know? But no single sign prevents violence. But patterns matter. You have to watch for these patterns, you know? And a lot of, I don't know, and that's a lot of, these days, a lot of people do not know how to deal with their emotions. And it's not only teens, it's adults also. Just don't know how to deal with their emotions, you know? And it might have to become a curriculum in school. How emotional, you know, emotional intelligence and how to deal with emotions, because it might have to start in high school. Because even as grown-ups, people don't change. They don't know how to deal with their emotions, and a lot of the stories that I have brung to you guys have been people that don't know how to deal with rejection. A lot of these tragedies start with rejection. But of course, I will, keep up everybody updated. I almost always do. Yeah, I'm sure she knows, Supreme. That's her emoji. Yes, I read the chat. I read the chat. I try to. No, I almost always do. I'm caught up, though. I'm caught up. I think I'm caught up. Yeah, I'm caught up. But yeah, so this tragedy didn't affect just one family. It shook a neighborhood, a school community, parents who now look at their own kids differently. Vigils have been held. The community is grieving. Once again, this did happen in Odessa, Texas, about 10 days ago. And prevention requires us to look at the systems, not just individuals. You know, kids deserve guidance, patience, emotional safety. We cannot expect kids to act like adults if we don't teach them how adults regulate emotions. Growing up isn't about, making people feel tough or hardening. It's about learning how to regulate your emotions. You're not going to always be happy. And of course, rejection does hurt, bother, most people. Some people could just move on very easily. So props to whoever, can just move on after being rejected, you know? Props to you. But some people don't find it that easy. It's not that easy for everybody. So, out of out of respect, I'm avoiding speculation and not naming the juvenile suspect. This conversation is about awareness, prevention, and emotional help, you know, not blame or sensationalism. But he does have to, speak for what he did. He does have to, now he has to deal with what he did emotionally. Now he has to face the father and the ex girlfriend in court, I'm sure. You know, he's gonna have to see their emotions, because I'm sure as the if there is a trial that they're gonna be able to speak. Their ex-girlfriend's gonna be able to speak. Her father's gonna be able to speak, because he lost two children. I am gonna stay updated and see what, you know, what his reasons are. Where was his emotions at the time? Where was his head at the time that he chose to make, this tragic choice? So at the end of the day, Jessica Rodriguez and her two children lost their lives. Two children who never got a chance to grow up. And multiple families are forever changed, including the family of the teen accused. You know? So this isn't about sides, it's about prevention. It's about doing better. It's about justice. Because at the end of the day, those three lives deserve justice. They were just living their everyday lives inside their house when somebody came into their home and unalived them. And that's not okay, you know? So I don't know if this kid had something going on in his life, we just never know. But hopefully it will come out so we can understand a little more, and I hope that we don't find out that this is something that was, showing in his family, that they knew something was wrong with him but never got him help. And that's why it is important to pay attention. Even little subtle changes in their behaviors, we have to pay attention to. We have to talk to them. We have to let them know, keeping your emotions to yourself is not okay. If this live even if this live helps even one parent, one kid speak up, or one family take emotions seriously, it matters. It matters. So pay attention, guys. Pay attention to those subtle changes, or even not so subtle changes. Make sure you're paying attention to those red flags. You know, most of the time, teens are not good at hiding their emotions. So if they're feeling a certain way about a breakup, about being bullied in school, they do show. So pay attention. Don't be too busy to realize something is happening in your own home to your child. You know? Don't be too caught up on social media or into yourself to not realize something's wrong with your child. You know? Try not to be so much wanting to be your child's friend that you let them get into a relationship where their emotions are high, and, they think it's the end of the world, that this is the love of their life, and that they're going to stop everything for that person. Talk to them. Talk to them about how to regulate their emotions. And if you can't talk to them, suggest someone that can. Let them find that person that they can feel comfortable talking about their emotions. You know? Yeah, this is sad on all ends, Mel. Lily's been gone making songs, Supreme. Tell her she needs to come live. We need to see some of her cooking. We need to see more of her cooking. We need to see more of her hangman. We just need to see more. I've been telling her. I've been telling her. She's been hiding too much. We gotta get her out here in these YouTube streets. You don't know why he asked for you? Because you've been hiding. Especially today. Yeah, well, the last 2 days you haven't really been in chats either. But yeah, so I'm just hoping for justice for Jessica Rodriguez and her two children. You know, they were only 13 and 9 years old. They had their whole life ahead of them. And I'm hoping, that the girlfriend that, was able to, stay alive gets the help that she needs, because I know that she's going to live with guilt for a very long time. And she's definitely going to need, therapy as well, to be able to, you know, keep living and become an adult that doesn't have this tragedy on her shoulders. You know, this changed her life forever as well. But anyway, guys, thank you for being here. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. You know, if you can please watch my playlist, help me with my watch hours, I'd be greatly appreciated. Be greatly appreciative. I'm on the road to 1K as well, so please subscribe. Double tap that screen, hit that like button for me. That helps me as well. And of course, if you would like to donate to my channel, my cash app is BXQueenC, BXQUEEN, and the letter C. Any donations are greatly appreciated. Um, yeah, so please take care of yourselves, and please check on your kids, you know? Check on your kids. If they're in relationships, make sure that they're okay, you know? If you can have a conversation with the other person just to make sure where their head is at, you know? Have that talk. Thanks, Lily. I need people that haven't seen my stuff to also watch the playlist so it could count. Because, if you already watched this, I don't think it counts unless you're under a different, under like a second channel or whatever. But thank you for everybody that passed through. Thank you, Mel. Thank you, Lily, Supreme, Corey, Trisha. Thank you for whoever's gonna watch the replay. You know. Yeah. Thank you so much. Oh, on your son channel. My bad, girl. My bad. I be trying to read too fast. I be trying to read too fast. So I think you'll be back. You'll be back to your regularly scheduled program probably tomorrow. At what movie you was watching? Maybe we'll have another late night chat. Maybe we could have another late night chat one of these days. Oh, the turning. Oh, it's a scary movie. You and your scary movies. That new SpongeBob movie comes out this weekend. Oh, to have a late night chat, it will have to wait for 2 weeks. Damn. Damn. No. It's too early for a scary movie. I like watching scary movies at night. At real nighttime. So we're gonna have to have a what? A midday chat one of these days then? A midday chat? But I'll definitely be keeping you guys updated on this because, I definitely want to know what's going to happen, how that person is going to be charged, you know? What was their reasoning even though no reason is okay, you know? But make sure that we it's okay. I'm ending it anyway. It's okay. Ew. Hey sis, Tamik. Yes, please watch the replay because I am going now. But thank you for everybody that passed through. I appreciate your support. Like, share, comment, subscribe. And if you're on the replay, thank you for watching. I appreciate you. I appreciate everyone. And happy Friday. And remember, check on your kids. Mental health matters. Get your emotions regulated. Too many tragedies happening because people do not know how to deal with their emotions. But I'll catch you on the next one. If you want to donate, my Cash App is always pinned. Check ya later.